Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Willie, and this is the encouraging word for today. Did you ever say, I can't take it anymore? This week I saw a man, he was with a little boy. Maybe the boy was 2 years old, and his wife was with a little baby, a newborn baby, and the boy was cranky and crying and everything like that. And the man was trying to get him to do something. I was just walking by, minding my own business. And finally I hear the man say, "That's it. I can't take it anymore. We're going." He picked him up and they went off to their car. I'm not talking about that, where we have a momentary sense of being overwhelmed. I'm talking about when we're in a season of life that doesn't seem to have any end to it, where we're living in a state of being overwhelmed. It can happen after the death of a loved one, or after a disaster, or after a diagnosis, or just one thing on top of another, a setback here, another setback, a rejection here, and it's just one thing after another. And we find ourselves in a state where we just can't take it anymore. And we feel it. We can't take anymore. Another little event would break it, the straw that breaks the camel's back. And we already have bricks on our back, and we can't take it anymore. The Bible talks about real life. That's why I love the Bible. And it talks about people who are in that situation where they couldn't take life anymore. They couldn't take it. And so when we feel like that, we can turn, when we are like that, we can turn to the Bible and see what other people have done and what has happened to them. So today we're following the story of Paul, and we're looking in 2 Corinthians, because we've been looking at Acts, where we see the facts of what happened. And in Acts, we see that when Paul was in the province of Asia, he was beaten, he was stoned, he was rejected, he was thrown out of places, he was left for dead. This is one after another, opposition. And so in 2 Corinthians, it tells us how he was feeling. Because if we read Acts by itself, we think Paul is a Superman. I mean, he gets stoned, left for dead, and he gets up and he goes back to his ministry. We think this guy is a Superman. But 2 Corinthians gives us his inner feelings, and he writes down candidly how he feels. So today let's look at 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8 through 9. Paul says this: "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead." He starts out by saying, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters. Why would he write this? Isn't this a sign of weakness, that he's feeling overwhelmed? Why would he write this? And I know why he wrote it, because the Holy Spirit inspired him to write it, and the Holy Spirit inspired him to write it so we wouldn't think that Paul was some kind of superhuman. So we would understand that Paul was just like you, just like me, who got overwhelmed beyond his ability to endure. So God specifically put that here in the Bible. So we would know it is not a sign of weakness when we reach the end of our limit. We are all mortal, limited human beings, including Paul, including you, including me. And things happen to people. Bad things happen to people that can lead us to be overwhelmed, where we can't take it anymore. We can't take it anymore. Paul was in that place. And yes, he was a Christian. Yes, he was a dedicated follower of Jesus. And yes, he was doing the will of God. Yet still, he was in that place. That's why the Holy Spirit wants you today to understand that. So we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles, plural. It piled up on him, troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. Here's how he said it felt to him. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure. We all have a limit of what we can endure. Physically, maybe you could run a mile, 2 miles, 6 miles. Some people run 26 miles. But we all have a limit of what we can endure. And the same is spiritually, and the same is emotionally. There's just so much trauma, so much opposition, so much disaster we can handle. It gets beyond our ability to endure. God expects us to take care of things that are within our ability to endure. But when we reach the limit, as Paul did, beyond our ability to endure, it's the good news. That's where God steps in. And it got so bad with Paul that he says, so we despaired of life itself. He felt like dying. He probably said to himself, I'd rather be dead than continue going through something like this. Can you imagine the Apostle Paul? He despaired of life itself. He preferred to die. It says, indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. He felt like this was it. He didn't see any future. He didn't see any way out. This was just too much beyond his ability to endure. But God will allow us to get to that point where we can endure no longer. And then something miraculous happens. God takes over. It's no longer our strength enduring. God gives us his strength to endure. And in his strength, we can do more than we can in our own strength. He expects us to do what our strength can endure. But when we reach that limit, God steps in and does the supernatural, allows us to endure. And he says that here towards the end. He says, but this happened. In other words, God allowed this to happen, that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He got to the point where, he was a tough guy. He was a driven man. But God brought him to the point where he realized, I cannot do this in my own strength anymore. And that may seem like a horrible place to get to, but it was actually the best place to get to. Because when we take our hands off the steering wheel, when we get out of the driver's seat and sit in the passenger seat and let Jesus sit in the driver's seat every day, every hour, every minute, then we can do whatever he calls us to do, because we're relying no longer on ourselves, but now We're relying on God. And it's the God who raises the dead. So I hope that encourages you today. And I will see you again tomorrow as we continue the encouraging word. God bless you.